Peace be upon you. I hope you all are doing well. It's Sammy with you here. I just have an announcement or two, rather one. An announcement. I'm going to be doing Tigrinya lessons from A to Z. I don't know when, but I'll keep you guys in the loop. But I will be doing Tigrinya lessons from A to Z, meaning we're going to cover that topic and that language thoroughly, God willing. Secondly, I wanted to do, so before I get into this program, I wanted to do a history series, Eritrean history series, based on Walde Yesus's book, Eritrea, Root Causes of War and Refugees. But I couldn't get a hold of Walde Jesus, so in order to get his permission for me to do it, because I want to go through the whole text. I think that it's a masterpiece of a text, but I need his permission, and I can't get a hold of him. He's around, but I can't get a hold of him. If I get a hold of him, I'll ask him, and if he says yes, then I'll do it. So my plan was to do that and then do what I'm about to do now. But what I'm about to do now, which is still on the topic of Eritrea. This would have been good as something that came after, but it's okay because this particular article is still relevant and it still includes Eritrean history thoroughly. However, Walde Yesus's book was more of like more of what is Eritrea. It was more of a what is Eritrea. This article does talk about what is Eritrea, but it focuses more on Eritrea's the pain that Eritrea has gone through and is still going through. So we'll discuss that. The book is titled, or the article, is titled "The Historical Orbit of Eritrea's Agony." It's by Dr. Alemseged Abbay, a very nice professor that I know who's from Tigray, who does know about Eritrean, he is familiar with Eritrean plight. I don't think he lived through it, but he is familiar with it. So he is familiar with it. He has done, he does know about the revolutions or the revolution. He does know about what took place and why and these things. He has a view. Whatever I read does not reflect my personal views necessarily. If it's something that I disagree with, I will mention it. I'm not going to just read through it without. I'm going to read and then explain like I do in my videos on. I changed the title. It used to be the Islam nobody told you about. Now it's what nobody taught you, what nobody taught you about Islam, or something like that. It's the same thing. We're going to read and we're going to discuss. Alemseged Abbay is a professor, by the way. You can find out more about him online. He wrote a book called Identity Jilted. I forgot the full name, but if you type in Identity Jilted, Alemseged Abbay, you will find his text. So let's talk about the historical orbit of Eritrea's agony. They're suffering before anything. I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. So they're suffering under racist Italian colonialism, pushed Eritreans to retreat into their millennia-old Ethiopian identity. I think when he talks about Eritreans here, he's talking about the Tigrinya, I think. So it pushed them to retreat to their millennia-old, meaning 1,000-year-old, Ethiopian identity. When he says Ethiopian, I don't think he means Ethiopia as in the name has always existed. I think he means Ethiopia as in like that Abyssinian identity. I think that's what he's talking about. However, suffocation under Ethiopian political oppression and cultural chauvinism led them to don a distinct counter-identity of Eritreanness. So, suffocation under Ethiopian political oppression and cultural chauvinism led them to don a distinct counter-identity of Eritreanness. This, I would respectfully, I have to disagree with that. It wasn't just that. That's true. It is the Ethiopian oppression that led to, that increased the Eritreanness. Before that, what happened was the Italians, and this is why I wanted to read one of the reasons you can say, well, De Jesus's book would have been better first. The Italians are the ones who created the Eritrean identity. When the Eritreans were under the Italians from 1890 until 1941, an identity was formed. They became known as the Eritreans. The Eritreans. They became known as that. After Italy named the nation, which I believe Alemseged covers. Alemseged covers Eritrean history. This is just a small intro before the intro. So, subsequently, the 30-year war between the forces of chauvinism, Ethiopia, and the forces of secession, Eritrea. Chauvinism meaning that it's all about us, and secession meaning separation. Secession, Eritrea has exposed the unimaginativeness of nationalism. Rather than seeking a mere redress to the legitimate grievances, upon which it was constructed, Eritrean nationalism veered into a false consciousness of exceptionalism, Eritreanism, which perforce became a zero-sum game for secession. So what he's saying is, he's acknowledging that it was legitimate. Eritreans to feel unhappy is legitimate. He accepts that. He acknowledges what the Eritreans feel. I haven't spoken to Amhara people about this. So if you guys like to say, if somebody wants to say something to judge what I'm reading, then I admit that I don't know something. I haven't spoken to the Amhara, but I haven't heard an Amhara sympathize with Eritrean suffering, either because probably they don't know, or because they don't believe in Eritrean suffering. They just don't care, because they were under the nationalism that was pushed upon, that well, not pushed, but rather fed to them, and they accepted that feeding by Menelik and the likes of Menelik and Haile Selassie and this talk of nonsense. So when a divorce was finalized so Alemseged is acknowledging that there are legitimate grievances that our people, the Eritreans, had. He's acknowledging that. But it became a zero-sum game for secession. When a divorce was finalized in 1991, both Ethiopia and Eritrea ended up being losers. The former lost access to the sea, and the latter lost Ethiopia. We'll see what he means by what's going on here. Alemseged, I hope not. I don't think his intention is for anybody's land to be taken. He already tells us that he's against chauvinism, which tells us that he is not. He wants us to know that he's not pushing for any type of chauvinism. So he is calling for an Ethiopian nation without chauvinism. That's what he's saying. When a divorce finally happened in 1991, both Ethiopia and Eritrea ended up being losers. The former lost access to the sea, and the latter lost Ethiopia. By failing to deliver peace, democracy, and prosperity, secession has proven to be against the self-interests of the Eritrean people. Failing to deliver peace, prosperity, democracy. Somebody might say, well, there's peace in Eritrea. There's no war like Ethiopia has war, but we don't have war. First of all, just because you don't have war doesn't mean there's no peace. Just because our country has no war doesn't mean our country... Sorry, just because a country has no war doesn't mean there's peace. So just because our country, Eritrea, doesn't have war doesn't mean that there's peace. There are a lot of problems. So, there are a lot of issues that are... I know it's gonna sound repeated and repeated. Human rights violations are not a sign of peace. They're not a sign of peace. Human rights violations of any sort are not peace or prosperity or democracy. And those of you who defend that injustice should be ashamed of yourselves. And if you're not ashamed of yourselves, I'm not surprised, because it means you have no shame. And if you have no shame, then I don't know what you do calling yourself a Christian or a Muslim. If your name is Michael, then Mikael, then your name should not be Mikael, because Mikael is an angel. And angels are sinless. And angels are beings that are nothing but goodness. But if you are evil, then you're not an angel. You're a devil. You don't like what I'm saying? To hell with you. I don't have a problem saying this. So much so, meaning by failing to deliver peace, democracy, and prosperity, secession has proven to be against the self-interests of the Eritrean people. So much so that now the very idea of Eritrea verges on death. Thus, based on emotion rather than cognition, nationalism can be a dysfunctional project. Nationalism can be a dysfunctional project. This is true, even from an Islamic and Christian perspective. By the way, search nationalism, Orthodox Christianity. Search that. You'll find Orthodox Christianity's stance on nationalism. There's nothing wrong with defending a nation. But both Islam and Orthodox Christianity have very, very strict rules when it comes to nationalism. What kind of nationalism is okay and what kind of nationalism is not okay? I don't know about Orthodox Christianity's... I've read the articles a long time ago. But there's one on Wikipedia and there's one which is on its own site. But in Islam, nationalism is not... It's dangerous. It's considered dangerous. Nationalism will... If you're defending a land, okay, like let's say I'm in a car, right? Somebody wants to come steal the car, I can defend the car. Nothing wrong with that. But if I start to have a pride and say that my car is the best and make and start my own chauvinism based on my car or my land or my neighborhood or my block, or I start behaving like a gangster, this is a sin. Obviously, this is wrong. It leads to hatred of others. It leads to evil words. It leads to anger. It leads to craziness. It leads to insanity. So thus, based on emotion rather than cognition, nationalism can be a dysfunctional project. However powerful it may be, it does not have to lead to secession. So Alemseged's view is that nationalism doesn't have to lead to secession. So I believe, based on what we just read, Alemseged's view is that Dr. Alemseged's view is that the matter should have been readdressed, revisited. Meaning, why Eritrea became Eritrea should have been, why the Eritreans had a problem. The problem that the Eritreans were facing should have been revisited, should have been addressed. Let's talk about this issue. We don't have to separate. We don't have to divorce. We can talk this over and let's see what what conclusion we can arrive at. That's what he's saying. That's his perspective, in my understanding, rather than Eritrea being a separate entity. Why does he say this? I think it's because Alemseged rightfully so. He's a proud Tigrayan. And Dr. Alemseged, being not only that, he's very, he's a political scientist. I mean, I don't know if he's a political scientist by his career, by profession, but meaning by his career. But I mean, I would think he is. But he's a political scientist. But he's very proud to be Tigrayan. And what I see in his book, Identity Jilted, which I'm reading currently, he's very strong when it comes to the division he's very against the division between the Tigrinya of Eritrea and the Tigrinya basically the Tigrinya of Tigray. He's against that, which he has a right to be, because they were one people. They are one people, and they will always be one people. So I think that might be, maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying that might be one of the things that drive him. One of the things that drives him to this "you don't need to separate" thing, because it will lead. And he already gave us reasons that at the end you guys got nothing out of it. Meaning we got nothing. We didn't get peace. At the end, Ethiopia lost the sea. And Eritrean may say, well, who cares? Well, it's not their sea. It's ours. I mean, whose sea it is, it's you have to remember that Italy created us. We're going to get to that. Italy created us. Think about it. When we say Eritrea, I'm not saying right now, I'm not saying that we should be part of Ethiopia. So don't say that, I'm saying we should, I'm saying Andinet or something like, or whatever. I'm not saying that. And even if we were part of Ethiopia, if Ethiopia had a peaceful government, if they had a just government, I would have no problem taking their government over the garbage we have right now. Over the filth that we have right now. I have no problem doing that. Whatever is good for the people, all people, not just a few, all people. If everyone gets to eat, if everyone gets to live peacefully, if everyone gets to live happily, I'm happy. We ended up with no peace, no prosperity, no democracy. And the nationalism, he said, nationalism, he says, can be a dysfunctional project. And he mentions emotion rather than cognition. When you think with your emotions, it leads to negative consequences. I'm angry. I'm going to go hit this guy. You don't think about the consequences. You might hurt him. He's going to end up in the hospital. You might regret it. You might end up in trouble with the law. I don't know. That's what happens in the state of anger. In the state of extreme sadness, it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be mad. But if you end up in these extreme emotional states of being, you end up saying things which things which do not plant seed. They don't plant seeds. They just throw stones on fertile land. Stones are thrown on fertile land. And then a person may complain that trees are not growing. Or he may say something worse and say trees are indeed growing. We have trees when there are no trees, and he's throwing stones instead of seeds. You get what I'm. This is emotion. In the following video, we'll go to the introduction, the actual introduction, because he gives us a small little introduction as to what he's going to speak about, and then he gets into the introduction to the text, to the article. So that's what we're going to do. Next video, we're going to talk about the introduction, and it includes what Eritrea is briefly, but it works. I want to thank Dr. Alemseged for letting me use his work. This work is indeed, I did enjoy reading it. I was fortunate to come across it, and I did enjoy reading what he had to say. I enjoy reading the author's who wrote authors who are who write about the history of Eritrea and Ethiopia. Taddese Tamrat, he wrote The Church and State in Ethiopia, which is a main source for many writers these days and even in older days. Taddese Tamrat, he wrote Church and State in Ethiopia, which includes the history of the people there between Ethiopia and Eritrea. It was written in like the 60s or 70s, perhaps 70s, I think. Taddese Tamrat, Walde Jesus Ammar, good author. Usman Saleh Sabbay, who was a good author. Mikhail Gaber, he wrote at least one book. These people, they wrote books, they wrote texts that I read, and I was just like, whoa, this is very interesting. It makes you proud to be to have roots proud to be where your roots are from. It gives you a sense of pride, but a good pride, not a pride where you just start to hate everyone and you become this crazy fanatic. No, rather a pride where it's like, wow, I'm proud to be who I am, and I'm proud to be from, this place. As ugly as situations may be over there, you become proud of the culture, of the good parts of the history, of the development, how things developed. You become proud of many things, and that's why I encourage people here to read history. Read history of Eritrea, and the old texts, which are history of Ethiopia, include Eritrea. Spencer Trimmingham wrote a book called Islam in Ethiopia, which talks about, which includes the Eritrea. It talks about Eritrea. It includes Eritrea because at that time, I believe Eritrea was part of Ethiopia. So, of course, unwillingly was part of, reluctantly. Spencer Trimmingham. I think there's someone called Travaskis. He wrote something. I don't know who he was exactly. I think it was some political figure. Travaskis. If you guys look into so there's trimming there the languages. This book you'll find used, but there's a book called The Semitic Languages of Ethiopia, or the Semitic Ethiopic Languages, which talks about different things. It mentions things like Tigrinya. I know I'm digressing, but Tigrinya, Ullendorf wrote that book. He might have written another book or more about Eritrea and Ethiopia. Edward Ullendorf, I think, is his name. He wrote a book, and in that about languages. In that book, he included that the Tigrinya language and the Amharic language, both these languages are mixtures between Ago and Ge'ez. Ge'ez was the ancient language which today is spoken in churches, and its daughters are alive today: Tigrinya, and Amharic. Tigray is also known as Tigrayit. It's spoken in Eritrea, northwestern Eritrea, and also northwestern Eritrea. And then you have Tigrinya, and then you have Amharic, descendants of Ge'ez. Also, he mentioned that Tigrayit descended from Ge'ez and Beja. That's what he said, Ullendorf. You can find this in the footnotes of Church and State and in Ethiopia by Taddese Tamrat, which I encourage you guys to read. Very amazing book. In any case, that's all I have for this particular episode of this series, Alemseged Abbay's The Historical Orbit of Eritrea's Agony. We will continue with the introduction next time. I'll see you then. Until then, God bless you. Take care. Peace be with you.